All right, let's talk about a story that is frankly as tragic as it is infuriating. It's a case from the early 80s that absolutely rocked Hollywood, and, it brought up some really tough questions about justice, fame, and domestic violence. We are talking about the killing of actress Dominique Dunne. So, picture this. It's the summer of 1982, and Dominique Dunne is completely on top of the world. She's only 22 years old, and she's one of the stars of Poltergeist, which was one of the biggest, if not the biggest movie of the year. I mean, her career was just exploding. But then, just a few months after that huge premiere, the horror from the movie screen became terrifyingly real. Dominic became the victim of a brutal, real-life crime that would cut her incredible life way too short and leave her family fighting for a justice they felt was completely and utterly denied. So who exactly was Dominique Dunne? Well, she came from a pretty prominent family. Her dad was the famous writer Dominique Dunne, and her brother is the actor Griffin Dunne. But she was really making a name for herself. She'd been in a bunch of TV shows, and it all led up to that breakout role in Poltergeist. Everything, and I mean everything, was pointing towards a long, amazing career. But her life took a really dark turn in 1981. That's when she met John Sweeney, a sous chef at a trendy LA restaurant. They moved in together super fast, but the relationship soured almost immediately. Sweeney was incredibly possessive and jealous, and it didn't take long for that jealousy to escalate into a clear and very dangerous pattern of abuse. And this timeline here, it just shows you how terrifyingly fast everything went downhill. In late August, he attacks her, literally pulls her hair out by the handfuls. Just 1 month later, September 26th, he strangles her so violently she has to crawl out a bathroom window to get away. That's it, she ends the relationship. But just over a month after that, on October 30th, he shows up at her house one last time. And that brings us to that horrible night, October 30th, 1982. Dominique was at her home, and she was actually rehearsing for her next big role in the miniseries V. She was working with another actor, David Packer, when John Sweeney showed up out of the blue, tragically cutting her life short. These were some of her last words, said to a friend on the phone, just moments before the attack. Sweeney had actually forced his way onto her call. You can just hear the fear and the exhaustion in her words. She went outside to talk to him on the porch, probably just hoping to make him leave for good. Now, inside the house, David Packer could hear the argument getting louder and louder. He later testified that he heard these awful smacking sounds, then 2 screams, and then just a sickening thud. When he ran outside, he found Sweeney kneeling over Dominique's unconscious body in the driveway. When the police got there, Sweeney literally met them with his hands in the air. He confessed immediately. He just told them, "I killed my girlfriend and I tried to kill myself." There was no confusion, no ambiguity. He admitted to the whole thing right then and there. Dominique was rushed to the hospital, but she never, ever regained consciousness. Her brain had been deprived of oxygen for too long during the strangulation. For 5 days, she was on life support, and then her family had to make that absolutely impossible decision to let her go. What came next wasn't justice. It was this incredibly controversial trial that started in August of 1983. It was presided over by a man named Judge Burton S. Katz. And the case, The People versus Sweeney, it quickly became a media circus, and honestly, a case study in how badly the legal system can fail victims of domestic violence. So the entire trial really boiled down to this one question. The defense claimed that Sweeney just snapped, that he acted in the heat of passion because Dominique told him the breakup was for real. But the prosecution, they argued it was plain and simple murder, committed with malice and clear intent to kill. Now, this is where things get really fascinating. You can see how the two sides told completely different stories in court. The defense tried to paint this picture of a heartbroken guy who just lost control. But the prosecution, they just dismantled that, piece by piece. The medical examiner said that strangulation takes at least 3 minutes. That's not a momentary lapse. And Sweeney's claim about a suicide attempt? The police found 0 evidence, and they described him as calm and collected, not distraught at all. And this is where the case just goes completely off the rails. Judge Katz made a series of rulings that just torpedoed the prosecution's case. He blocked testimony from Sweeney's previous girlfriend, a woman Sweeney had also hospitalized from his attacks.
He decided that testimony from Dominique's own mother and friends about the abuse was inadmissible hearsay, and then, the final blow, he took first-degree murder completely off the table, leaving the jury with only second-degree murder or the much, much lesser charge of manslaughter.
So after all those rulings, the outcome felt, well, it felt inevitable to a lot of people. What happened next wasn't just a verdict. It was something that sent shockwaves through the community and led to this widespread feeling that a huge miscarriage of justice had just taken place. In the end, the jury found Sweeney not guilty of second-degree murder. Instead, they convicted him of the lesser charge, voluntary manslaughter. They basically bought the defense's heat of passion argument, which, the judge had made it incredibly easy for them to do. So for strangling Dominique Dunne to death, John Sweeney was sentenced to just 6.5 years in prison. And get this, that was the maximum possible sentence for the crime he was convicted of. The absolute maximum. But it gets worse. He didn't even serve that. Sweeney was released on parole after serving just 2.5 years. 2.5 years for taking a 22-year-old woman's life. It's just unbelievable. And here is the final, mind-bending twist. At the sentencing, Judge Katz, the same judge whose rulings had completely crippled the prosecution's case, he actually said that he believed Dominique's death was a case, pure and simple, of murder. Can you even imagine? It's an absolutely astonishing thing to say after everything he did during the trial. Dominique's father, Dominique Dunne, he just couldn't hold it in. After the judge had thanked and dismissed the jury, Dunne stood up and screamed this right at him, basically accusing him of hiding the truth from the jury. It was just this raw, powerful moment of a father's grief and pure outrage. But the Dunne family, they didn't just grieve. They took action. Her dad wrote this incredible, searing article for Vanity Fair called Justice, laying out everything that went wrong. Her mom founded a victims' rights group. And when Sweeney got out and got a job as a chef, the family stood outside that restaurant handing out flyers until he finally quit and left town. They turned their private tragedy into a public fight. The story of Dominique Dunne is so much more than just another Hollywood tragedy. Her family's fight for some kind of accountability really forced a national conversation. And it leaves us with this huge question that is just as relevant today as it was back then. What happens when the system fails? Who fights for the victim? And what does real justice even look like?